Alright guys, I am back yet again with another deck profile for Cardfight Vanguard Dear Days on Nintendo Switch. This time we got version 1 of my Dragon Empire Gandeeva Scarlet Flame deck. So version 1, everything through the additional special set, so through a fraction of the booster set 11. However, the only card in this deck from that last DLC pack is just a vanilla heal, so you can pretty much play this deck without buying that last DLC pack, with just an aesthetic change. But anyway, this deck focuses on retiring your opponent's rear guards in order to allow you to bind your own cards, and filling up your bind zone in order to power up your front row units. So a pretty cool deck overall. So as always, we'll be going through the deck, and I'll show it off in one card fight for you to see it in action. So starting first with the ride deck, we have our Grade 0 starter, which is Scarlet Flame New Soldier Buckish. So when he's rode upon, if you win second, draw a card. Standard D-Series starter. Next for the Grade 1, we have Scarlet Flame Bow Soldier Aggie Red. I guess I'm gonna have to take some best guesses on some of these names, people. But anyway, he's got a continuous ability that says if your opponent has one or less rear guards, when you would ride Scarlet Flame Bow General Depanel from your ride deck, you can ride without discarding a card from hand. And then he also has his auto ability that says when this unit is rode upon, if your opponent has two or more rear guards, you may call this card to rear guard circle. So you will only get to use one of these two abilities, and which one you get depends on how many rear guards your opponent happen to call when you get ready to ride into your Grade 2. So if they have one or less rear guards, you basically get to ride for free, since you don't have to discard in order to ride into Depanel. Or if they had two or more rear guards, then you get to call Aggie Red out from your soul. So generally, the first skill is the better of the two, I think, in my opinion, since it actually gives you some free card advantage by getting rid of that discard cost. If you call him out of your soul, it is a -1 to your soul, which this deck isn't very Soul Blast heavy, so that's not a huge deal. But it does just get you a vanilla 8k unit onto your board. So generally speaking, I prefer it when I get the first skill, but obviously you have no control over which one you'll get to use. But either way, you will benefit in some fashion. So next for the Grade 2, we of course have Scarlet Flame Bow General Depanel. So he has an auto ability that says when this unit is rode upon by a unit with Gandeeva in its card name, you choose one of your Vanguards, and until end of turn, the cost of that unit's original activate ability is reduced by Counterblast 1. So Gandeeva does have one activate ability with a cost of a Counterblast 1, so this skill will make his activate ability free for the turn that you ride into him. So a free usage of that ability on turn 3, helping you extend those resources a little bit. So a pretty helpful skill. So then lastly for the Grade 3, we have Scarlet Flame Martial Dragon Gandeeva. So he has 3 abilities. First of which is an auto ability that says when your opponent's rear guard is retired during your turn, you choose a card from your drop and you may bind it face down. So that ability lets you fill up your bind zone in order to set up for his continuous ability that says during your turn, all of your front row units get power plus 2,000 for each face down card in your bind zone, and if your bind zone has 5 or more face down cards, this unit gets critical plus 1. So this is the main source of power gain in this deck, letting you power up your entire front row for 2,000 power for each card in your bind zone that is face down. So hopefully you can get to 5 by turn 3 in order to get that crit online immediately. It does take a little bit of setup in order to do that, so you might not be able to get it by turn 3, but you should have absolutely no problem getting it by turn 4 at the very least. So this is a snowballing power gain that will go higher and higher the more cards you get into your bind zone. So the longer the game goes, the more this benefits you, since you can just power up all your front row units more and more. Which the whole deck does focus on retiring your opponent's rear guards, so that will trigger his first ability very often in order to get those cards into your bind zone. And we also have several cards that can bind themselves from your field or whatever. So filling up that bind zone should be no problem at all. And then lastly, he does have his Activate ability that says once per turn, you can counterblast one to choose 5 of your opponent's rear guards with different grades from each other, reveal the top 5 cards of your deck, retire all of the chosen units with the same grades as the cards revealed, shuffle your deck, and if you retired 1 or less cards, you draw a card and choose a card from your drop and bind it face down. So this is the ability that will be cost free on turn 3 thanks to Dipanel's skill, and it is a pretty potent retiring ability, letting you potentially trigger his first ability multiple times. Now, it is random chance with this skill since you have to reveal the top 5 of your deck, and then you can retire your opponent's rear guards based on the grades of the cards you get in the top 5. So you can pick 1 of each grade that's on your opponent's board. So it depends on how many different grades your opponent has out on their field, and also which grades you find in the top 5. So there's sort of 2 levels of random chance to this. But it is potentially up to a -4 to your opponent if they have a grade 0, 1, 2, and 3 on their field, which isn't going to be the case very often. But no matter what the outcome is, you will get something out of this skill, because even if you don't manage to retire any rear guards with this, you still will get the draw and a bind 1 from your drop zone. So it will help you fill up your bind zone and get you a card into your hand if nothing else. If you do manage to only take out 1 of their rear guards, it'll get you a card into your hand, a -1 to your opponent obviously, and 2 cards into your bind zone thanks to his first skill triggering once, and then his Activate ability still giving you that 1 bind as well. And if you get any more retires than that, so 2 or more retires, you would just get to retire that many of your opponent's rear guards and get that many binds as well, since you'll get to bind 1 for each retire. So your mileage will vary with this, but you'll always get some sort of benefit out of it. And if you can combine it with Best Harvest, the normal order we're running in this deck, you can actually get a draw for each one of those retires as well. So that is one of the primary combos in this deck, helping you drastically reduce your opponent's card advantage while also increasing your own, and of course setting up your bind zone in order to take advantage of his continuous ability. So overall, a very dangerous Vanguard for the deck. So that is the right deck. Moving on to the main deck. First off, for the grade 3s, we of course have our 3 additional copies of Gandeeva, double frame rare, of course, for our Persona ride purposes. Next up, we have 1 copy of Scarlet Flame Bow General Sturgna. So he has an auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rear guard circle, if you have a Vanguard with Gandeeva in its card name, you can Soul Blast 1 and bind 1 other rear guard face down to choose 1 of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. And if you did not retire a card, you draw a card and choose a card from your drop and bind it face down. So this card is actually a very, very good card for this deck. It can potentially get 2 cards into your bind zone, since you have to bind 1 rear guard off your board, and then you either get a bind from his own ability after you draw if your opponent doesn't have any rear guards, or you get the bind off of Gandeeva's skill for retiring 1 of their rear guards. So if they do have a rear guard out, it's a -1 to you to -1 your opponent, and also get 2 cards into your bind zone. And if they don't have a rear guard out, then it's a ±0 to you to get 2 cards into your bind zone. So either way, it helps with setting up the at least 5 cards in your bind zone in order to get that crit online a lot faster. So that alone can be very helpful with this deck. You do have to get rid of 1 of your rear guards off your board, so if you end up calling out Red from your soul with his own skill, he's an excellent target for this cost, since he's just a vanilla unit on board anyway. So you can get him into bind and take advantage of this skill. Now, I am only running 1 copy of this card, and the reason for that is mostly just because I felt like it, because in the physical card game, this card is limited to 1. I think it's about to be bumped up to 2, at least for the Japanese format. But yeah, it got restricted to 1 on the ban list, which Deer Days does not follow the ban list, so you can run as many copies of this card as you want, up to 4. So I just voluntarily chose to follow the ban list because I felt like it. So if you don't want to do that and you want to run more copies of this card, you can absolutely feel free to do so. The game will allow it, which it would probably be a good idea to do so because this card actually is very good. So yeah, if you want to bump this up to more than 1, you can feel free. I just felt like following the ban list. So then lastly, for the grade 3s, we have 4 copies of our normal order Best Harvest. So there's no cost to play it, and it lets you choose one of your Vanguards, and until end of turn, it gets a new auto ability that says when your opponent's rearguard is retired during your main phase, you draw a card. So this is one of the most important combo pieces in the deck. You can play this and then retire as many units as possible off your opponent's board with Gandeeva's ability or with any of your rearguard abilities, and then you'll get to draw for each one of those retires. So this is potentially up to a +4 if your opponent has a full board and you manage to retire all of them through your various effects. So this is definitely an extremely important card in maintaining your card advantage. Now, unfortunately, we don't have any way to search it out of the deck or anything, so you do have to luck into drawing into it. But if you can play this consistently every turn, you definitely want to, and then you can pick apart your opponent's board and just rack up a massive hand. So yeah, absolutely fantastic card in this deck. So that is all the grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s. First off, we have 3 copies of Scarlet Flame Bow General Ruguent. Again, that's my best guess. But anyway, he has this auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you have a Vanguard with Gandeeva in its card name, you can counterblast 1 to choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it. And if you did not retire a card, you draw a card and choose a card from your drop and bind it face down. So pretty simple ability, just on call it gets you a retire and a bind or a draw and a bind if your opponent doesn't have any rearguards out. So again, you will always benefit from this skill. And after you use that skill, he is just vanilla on board, so he can also be another good target for Sturgna's ability. If you want to call him, use his skill, and then call Sturgna and bind this card in order to pay Sturgna's cost. That can be a nice combo that can take out possibly 2 of your opponent's rearguards and get you at least 3 cards into your bind zone. So yeah, overall a very helpful card. So next we have 4 copies of Drag Ritter Alpha Car. So its auto ability says when your Vanguard with Gandeeva in its card name attacks a grade 3 or greater Vanguard, you can counterblast 1 and bind this unit face down. To look at the top 5 cards of your deck, choose up to 1 grade 3 or less unit card from among them, call it to rearguard circle, and shuffle your deck. So this is one of your main offensive cards in the deck. It does allow you to get a 4th and potentially 5th attack in 1 turn if you have 2 copies of it in your front row. And he binds himself face down in order to empty out that front row circle to call something else new too. So not only does he give you that extra attack, he also gets you another card into the bind zone. So that will automatically give your front row another 2k. Now the extra attack you get out of this will come from the unit that you superior call off of the top 5, so there is that RNG factor of finding something good in the top 5 to call. However, with Gandeeva pumping up your front row by so much power thanks to his skill, you don't have to worry about that too much. Like even if you get totally screwed and you end up having to like call a trigger or something from it, from turn 4 onwards you should have so many cards in your bind zone at that point that even a weak unit like that in the front row should be still hitting some decent numbers. So yeah, a definite 4 of in this deck. So next up we have 2 copies of Bolt Blamer Dragon. And yes, they spelled it like that as Bolt Brimar. I don't know how these things keep happening. But anyway, he has his auto ability that says when this unit attacks a Vanguard, if you have a Vanguard with Scarlet Flame in its card name, this unit gets power plus 5,000 until end of that battle. And at the end of that battle, you can counterblast 1 and retire this unit. to choose one of your opponent's rearguards and retire it, and if it was not retired, you draw a card and choose a card from your drop zone and bind it face down. So he should always be at a 15k base, plus however much power he's gaining from Gandeeva's skill, pumping him up even more. So he's a nice beat stick card, and then after he attacks, you can also use the rest of the skill to retire himself, and retire one of your opponent's rearguards, which will give you a bind. Or, of course, if they don't have any rearguards, you draw and bind one. So this ability isn't as good as some of the other retiring skills in this deck. For one thing, he has to retire himself to do it. So it's a -1 to you to -1 them. Or if they don't have any rearguards out, it's a +/-0 just to get one more card in your drop zone, or into your bind zone, rather. Excuse me. So for a Counterblast 1, that isn't the best thing in the world. And of course, this ability also triggers during the battle phase, so that means it cannot combo with Best Harvest, since Best Harvest only lets you draw if you retire during the main phase. So, still can be helpful, but not as helpful as some of the other retiring skills in this deck. If you did want to bump up Sturgna to a higher number, this would probably be the card that you would take out to run more copies of him. But yeah, since I'm keeping him to 1, I did just pop this in his place. So then lastly, for the grade 2s, we have 3 copies of Great Flame Axe of Ambitious Scales, Kolgaflon. So our first auto ability says when this card is discarded from hand during your ride phase, you can Soul Blast 1 and put this card on the bottom of the deck and draw a card. So pretty helpful skill early on. If you discard her for your ride deck, you can just send her back to the bottom and Soul Blast 1 to draw a card. So you get to maintain your card advantage and make up for that discard cost of having to ride. And then she also has her second auto ability that says when this unit is placed on rearguard circle, if you Persona Road this turn, you can Counterblast 1 and retire all of your opponent's rearguards in the same column as this unit. So obviously this skill is turn 4 at the soonest, since you had to Persona Ride in order to get it. But if you do get your Persona Ride off, you can just call her and then nuke one of your opponent's columns. So if they have a full column, that will be a -2 to them, and also 2 more cards in your bind zone, thanks to Gandeeva's skill. And once again, she is vanilla on board after she uses that skill, so she can be a Sturgna bind target at that point as well. So overall, just a very nice card that flows very well with this deck. So that is all the grade 2s. Moving on to the grade 1s. First off, we have 3 copies of Scarlet Flame Bow Soldier Bowson. So he has an auto ability when he's on a back row rearguard circle that says when your Vanguard with Gandeeva and his card name attacks, if your bind zone has 3 or more cards, you can bind this unit face down and countercharge 1. So this ability is a -1, but it gets you a countercharge, so it can help extend some of your resources. And it does get another card into your bind zone, so it will automatically give an extra 2k to your front row, and can potentially turn on Gandeeva's critical if he's the 5th card that you get in there. And it triggers on Gandeeva's attack, so that will be just in time for him to take advantage of that extra critical. So a pretty helpful resource card for this deck, and it can also just be a nice card, you know, to clear off your own board if you're playing against another control deck or something. So yeah, very nice card. So next up, we got 3 copies of Crimson Scale Sword Maestro Bernaya. So his auto ability says at the end of the battle this unit boosted, if any player's rearguard was retired this turn, you can bind this unit face down and draw a card. So again, another just self-removing units. He does bind himself face down, so it does help you fill up that bind zone. And he lets you draw a card to replace himself, so he is a +/-0, so you can clear off your board, you can fill up your bind, and still maintain your card advantage. It does require there to be a rearguard retired that turn, either your own or your opponent's. So if your opponent's entire board is empty, you usually don't retire your own units in this deck. So you might not be able to use this skill if your opponent doesn't have any rearguards out, but that shouldn't be the case most of the time. So yeah, just another helpful card to fill up that bind zone. So the only other grade 1s we have are our Sentinels. So first off, we have 3 copies of Twin Buckler Dragon. Just your standard Perfect Guard. As well as 1 copy of the Blitzorder Elementaria Sanctitude, which you can play without paying the cost if your opponent's Vanguard has triple drive. So that's all the grade 1s. Moving on to the grade 0s, we just have our trigger lineup, which is 7 crits, 4 draws, 4 heals, and 1 over. So starting first with the crit triggers, we have 4 copies of Burning Flail Dragon. Crit with a skill. At the end of the battle it boosted, you can put in your soul to give one of your units plus 2k until end of turn. So don't use this skill very much. Like I said, this deck isn't really Soul Blast heavy, so you don't necessarily need the extra soul resource. If you do end up having to like Superior call him off an Alpha Car or something, that is a way to clear him off your board to put something better there. But yeah, generally this skill isn't used very often. So additionally, we have 3 copies of Blaze War Monk Sogyo. So just your vanilla crit. Next for the draws, we got 4 copies of Flare Veil Dragon. So to draw with a skill, if your opponent's Vanguard's grade 3 or greater, shield plus 5,000. So your 10k shield draw trigger. And then for the heals, we have 4 copies of Stealth Dragon Shikin Tan. So just a vanilla heal. Of course, if you want to run any effect heals, you can feel free to do so. And then lastly, for the over trigger, we have Dragon Deity King of Resurgence, Dragveda. So his additional effect lets you choose one of your Vanguards and stand it. So restanding your Vanguard, always a very powerful skill. Gives you that extra twin drive, the extra attack. And of course, if Gandeeva has the 5 cards in the bind, he'll have 2 crits as well. So even more pressure on your opponent. So that is the deck. So we will go ahead and have our one fight with it. And I think I'll fight Chrono this time, actually. And we will be going second. Alright, so we'll discard Kolgaflon to ride. And our starter skill will let us draw. And then Kolgaflon's ability will let us Soul Blast and send her to the bottom. Then we can draw again, and we draw another copy of her. So with that, I think I'll just go ahead and attack. And I'll get the draw off with GG's skill. And I'll let that one through. And we get a heal trigger, which we have nothing to heal. But we will get the power. And now he'll need a trigger to even hit us, so I'm going to let that one through. And he did not get one. And GG won't be able to hit either. Alright, so he's got 2 rear guards out, so we do have to discard for this ride cost. And if we drop Kolgaflon, we won't be able to use her skill right now. So I think I'm actually going to drop Bolt Blamer to ride. And then Agiraid will call himself out from the soul. And we'll put him in the front row. So then we will go ahead and attack with the Vanguard first.
ヴァンガードにアタック。
ノーガード。
ドライブチェック。
ダメージチェック。
And Aggie Red won't be able to hit the Vanguard, so we'll just take out GG.
ノーガード。
ターンエンド。
スタンド&ドロー。魂を震わせる。新世界へ導け。ライド。スキル発動。
And he'll get to add Bali to his hand, but he won't be able to stride this turn since we're only at grade 2. But he did mostly fill up his board. So I'm gonna let that one through.
ノーガード。ダメージチェック。よし、クリティカルトリガー。
And we get a crit trigger.
クリティカルプラス。パワープラス。
ヴァンガードにアタック。
And let's see, I think I'll go ahead and guard that one.
ガード。
ドライブチェック。ドライブチェック。
And he got no triggers.
ヴァンガードにアタック。
And I think I let that one through.
ノーガード。ダメージチェック。よし、ドロートリガー。
And we get a draw trigger.
パワープラス。
ターンエンド。
スタンド&ドロー。
Alright, so now we can discard Kogaflon
私の力見せてあげる。ライド。
to ride Gandeeva.
スキル発動。
And Dipanel's skill will remove the cost from his ability this turn. And Kogaflon will let us Soul Blast and bottom deck her again
発動。
to draw. So the first thing I want to do is play Best Harvest,
オーダー発動。
so that'll grant the draw ability to Gandeeva. And then we'll go ahead and use his activate ability, which is cost free thanks to Dipanel.
このスキルで決着よ。
So now we get to choose one of his rear guards for each grade. So we'll choose one of the grade 3s and one of the grade 1s. And then we look at the top 5 and we find grade 1 but no grade 3. So we'll get one retire out of that. And then we'll get to draw and bind a card face down from the drop.
バインド。
So that triggers Gandeeva's ability granted by Best Harvest to let us draw again, and his own auto ability to let us bind another card from the drop. So we'll bind
バイ
Dipanel.
ンド。
So that gives us 2 cards in the bind zone. So then we'll go ahead and call Ruguint
コール。
and use his ability to counterblast.
スキル発動。
And we can retire another rear guard, so we will take out one of these Balis, which again will trigger both of Gandeeva's abilities to let us bind another card from the drop,
バインド。
as well as draw thanks to Best Harvest. So then, let's see, we'll go ahead and call Bernia, and we'll put him over here. And then we'll call Alpha Car
コール。
and move him to the front. And I think that is all for now. So we will go ahead and attack. And let's see, I'm going to attack with Alpha Car first, not boosted actually.
ヴァンガードにアタック。
ノーガードだ。
Yeah, let's that one through. So let's see, we got 3 cards in the bind zone, so I'm going to attack with Ruguent, boosted by Bernaya.
ヴァンガードにアタック。
ガードだ。
And he guards. So then Bernaya's skill will let us bind him face down
バインド。
and draw again. So then we'll attack with Gandeeva,
ヴァンガードにアタック。
which will trigger Alpha Car's skill to counterblast and bind him face down.
発動。バインド。
Which will give us the 5 cards into our bind zone to give Gandeeva his extra crit. And then we call one from the top 5, and the only decent one we have is Bernaya. So we'll call him to the front row
メリオルコール。
スキル発動。
as a perfect guards.
完全ガードだ。
ドライブチェック。ドライブチェック。
So then we'll attack with Bernaya, boosted by
ヴァン
Red,
ガードにアタック。
ガードだ。
and he guards again.
ターンエンド。
俺のターンだ。ドロー。ストライド。ジェネレーション。スキル発動
And he
だ。
does stride into Fate Rider Dragon, and he uses Chrono Jet to bottom deck Bernaya.
スキル発動だ。ヴァンガードにアタック。
So let's see, we will. I think I'll let that one through actually.
ノーガード。ダメージチェック。オーバートリガー。
Oh, and we pull our over trigger. So we'll give that power to the Vanguard,
プラス。
and that's pretty much gonna shut down his offense this turn.
スキル発動。
So he's gonna attack our rear guard and use Fate Rider to call Gigi from the deck.
パワープラス。スキル発動だ。
Which will let him draw, but that attack won't be able to hit anything. So we're just gonna let that one
ノ
through.
ーガード。
ドライブチェック。クリティカルトリガー。クリティカルプラス。
And he gets a crit that is
パワ
wasted,
ープラス。ドライブチェック。
I guess, unless he gets his over trigger.
ドライブチェック。ドロートリガー。
But he did not. He did get a draw trigger though.
ターンエンド。
スタンドアンドドロー。
Alright, so now we will Persona Ride.
ペルソナライド。
Alright, so let's see. I will once again play Best Harvest
オーダー発動。
to gain our draw ability. So then we'll go ahead and use Gandeeva's skill once again to counterblast.
勝負。私に分がありそうね。スキル発動。
And all of his rear guards are grade 1, so we can only choose one of these. So we'll choose his back row centerling, I guess. And we did not find a grade 1 in the top 5. So we don't get to retire or anything, but we still get to draw and bind 1. So that gives us 6 cards in the bind zone. So let's see, I am going to call Sturgna, and I'll put him over here. And we'll go ahead and use his ability to Soul Blast, and we'll bind Aggie
ス
Red
キル発動。
off of our board
バインド。
to retire 1, so we will take out that Ling, which will trigger Gandeeva's ability twice to draw and to bind 1. So we'll bind Bolt Blamer. So that is 8 cards in our bind zone now. So we'll go ahead and call Alpha Car over here. And we'll call Bowson behind him. And I'm going to go ahead and call another Bowson as well behind Sturgna. And with that, I think we are good to go. So we will attack with Alpha Car first, boosted by Bowson. Yeah, let's that one through. So then we will go ahead and attack with Gandeeva. And I'm going to resolve one of these Bowson skills, but not the other one, so we'll bind him. And that'll let us countercharge, which will let us use Alpha Car's ability to counter blast right back and bind him. And we check the top 5, and let's see, we will call... we'll call Bolt Blamer. And we're not going to use that other Bowson skill. And he guards with a lot, but that's 2 to pass. So he will block. So then we'll attack with Bolt Blamer. Which skill will give him an extra 5k. And he lets that one through. And he gets a draw trigger. But we can't use the rest of Bolt Blamer's skill because we don't have any more face-up damage. But we still can attack with Sturgna, boosted by Bowson, for 51,000. And he did guard it just barely, but he's only got 1 card left in his hand. But he still manages to stride into next stage. And Chrono Jet will bottom deck Bowson. Alright, let's see. I'm gonna go ahead and perfect guard that one. And we'll discard one of these Kolgaflons. Oh, and he pulls his over trigger. Gives the power to a rear guard. But his second Vanguard attack will still get the 10k and a crit. So now he can de-stride from next stage and attack with Chrono Jet, which will have 2 crits and guard restrict. So let's see, we'll guard and we'll throw a 3rd crit on there, and that'll be 2 to pass. And he gets a heal trigger, which he does get. And I'm gonna let that one through. And I think I'm gonna let that one through too, actually. Alright, so he's only got 3 cards in his hand and 4 damage, so we should be able to get him here. So I think I'm going to go ahead and Persona Ride. And we drew Best Harvest, so I might as well go ahead and play it. So we have our draw skill once again. So let's see, I am going to go ahead and use Gandeeva's activate ability. And we'll choose a grade 3 and a grade 1. And from the top 5, we find a grade 1, but no grade 3. So we take out one of his rear guards, and we get to draw and bind one. And thanks to Best Harvest, we can draw again. And thanks to Gandeeva, we can bind again. So that's 12 cards in our bind zone now. So that's a whopping 24,000 power to our entire front row. So let's see, I am going to go ahead and call Bowson. And I'm going to put him over here. And I'm actually going to call Alpha Car over top of Bolt Blamer. Just so we can get that extra attack. And I'm going to go ahead and call Rugu Int back here. Even though he's useless in the back row, we're just going to do it for his skill. So we can Counter Blast, and we will retire Bali. Which will trigger Gandeeva's skills again. To let us draw and bind once more. Bringing us to 13 cards in the bind zone. So we'll call Bernaya as well to our back row center. And I think we are good. So now we can attack with Alpha Car first, boosted by Bowson. I mean, that's that one through. So then we'll attack with Gandeeva, boosted by Bernaya. And Bowson's skill will bind himself to let us countercharge. And then Alpha Car will let us counter blast and bind him as well. And we check the top 5 and we find another Alpha Car. So we'll call him. And we got 15 cards in the bind zone now. And he let that one through, and that's 2 crits. Plus we got a heal on top of it, so we heal 1. And we will give that power to Alpha Car. But we should have him here. And we got a crit trigger on top, so yeah, we definitely got him here. So crit to the Vanguard and power to Sturgna. And that is hitting for 3 crits. And yeah, we definitely got him with that. So there you go, that was my Gandeeva deck. Pretty fun deck. You can definitely make your front row hit some pretty insane numbers. Especially when the game goes kind of long, like it did this game. So anyway, I'll be back soon with more deck profiles. I believe next up I'm going to be doing my Claudine deck. So until then, I guess that's all for this video. So lots of luck to you and yours.